Hi everyone, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna.
And you're listening to We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast where we do exactly what the title says. On today's episode, we're judging the pilot of one of Anna's favorite shows. Hello everyone, welcome back to our pod.
Hi.
Happy 50th episode.
Happy golden.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, the golden anniversary is your 50th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it is our 50th episode. We have done, I can't believe it.
I know, we're still going.
Did you think that we were going to still be sticking with this when we first did this podcast?
I thought we would.
Yeah.
Because, I think initially when we first started, when I had given you the idea, and then we decided, I think one of the struggles, and I don't even think it was a struggle, so I don't know why I called it that, was I didn't know how we
challenge. It was a challenge.
I didn't know how we would decide what episodes we did. So when we decided to do a theme each month, to me that made it easier because we would talk like, oh, I love this show. I love that show. We've never watched this show. This was a top show, or this was something someone has suggested to us. So that made it a lot easier to plan, because I think that must be something really difficult to think about. Because I really do wonder about podcasters and how they think of the things that they want to talk about. Yeah. Now, I know they have guests, not speakers, but guest celebrities or guests on their pod. So they have obviously something to talk about. But when you have a podcast, you have to plan and think about what you're going to talk about for 40 50 minutes, and
sometimes more,
sometimes a little less, which is fine. But I think we found a good rhythm in our themes and then the way that we structure them that makes it easy to keep going.
And it's really interesting because we didn't necessarily have the theme that we have now in the beginning, where we share personal stories that parallel the storyline, which is kind of how we
came about,
kind of how we describe the show now to people or on social media or wherever. It's just once we kind of found that, it was just like everything just clicked, and it was just like, I get it now. I get what we're supposed to do now. Like it
sort of started happening, and then we were like, oh, that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
and
because it was like, at first it was like, I remember with Sex and the City, it was like, who's your favorite character? Which character do you think you are? It was very like, they were fun questions. It's not like they weren't fun questions, but it was very much just kind of like we were playing it safe. And we had to, because we didn't know what we were doing. So it was just, I was not even editing episodes. I was just like adding all of the sound bites and just putting it all together, because I didn't even know how to edit a video yet. Like I had to sit there. It was the Little House on the Prairie episode where I had to learn how to cut out stuff. It wasn't anything bad. It was just a really random episode that Anna talked about, and I was just kind of like, we should probably cut this out, because it really just kind of is really
a downer.
Really different from the rest of the episode. And
oh god, I forgot about that.
If you know about Little House on the Prairie, you probably know what episode we're talking about. Clown Mask. Anyway,
not a great episode.
Yeah. Anyway, so this podcast, we've talked about it on other episodes. We have so much fun doing this, and I just typed out, we have themes planned out until June. Yeah. So July. Sorry.
I just thought of another one. Yeah.
For another. Oh yeah, you did. That you haven't told me yet?
No, the one I told you about.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, you have another one? I was really excited.
and that's what's crazy is, when did we start this? Like July, right?
Our first episodes dropped in June.
Oh, June. So
I think, yeah.
So we have episodes through a year anniversary. Yeah. Like at least themes. We haven't like fleshed out all the actual shows we're gonna watch, but a lot of them we have.
Oh, through our 1 year anniversary, past our 1 year anniversary, we have the shows planned. We have the shows planned out till July.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So no, because we thought of the two other themes the other day. Well, we thought of the one theme the other day and just added it to a month that you thought of. And because we were struggling with May, And I know y'all are sitting here like, how many months away is that? And y'all are struggling with May, but I'm like, we are two people. We love to plan ahead. We like to know. We like having something to look forward to.
That definitely, but also because my work travel gets super crazy in January and February, so we will be hitting it pretty hard in December.
Yeah, so we're going to be home a lot. Yeah, so we're going to be recording a lot. So because we kind of got behind on episodes because of your work travel, it's not your fault. I'm just saying it's because your work travel.
Yes, I know. I can't help it.
But yeah, we got a little behind on episodes. So right now we're kind of like we're in November. We're recording the November episodes. But then right after that, we're doing December, and then in December, we're doing the January and the February episodes at the very end of December, beginning of January, because I saw your work schedule, and the second half of January, you're basically just not going to be here. So, I mean, like...
It's bad.
So, yeah, it was kind of like, okay, well, we need to get this all locked in through February, so when you come back in the beginning of February, we can start fresh with the new recording schedule. And in the meantime of all that, I will be editing like a madman. So
that, and then we have Maddie's graduation trip and Maddie's graduation, my birthday,
you have
I have
AOPI
convention. So, I mean, there's always something going on.
You have work convention at the end of January, and then you have AOPI convention in the summer.
Yeah. So it's always, there's always something. But I think because we plan, we have a good rhythm, and we can do one episode in an evening, but then sometimes we'll do two or even three if it's like 3 short 30-minute episodes. So
yeah, we don't have like a set for just for some BTS for y'all. We don't really have like a set recording schedule.
Oh no.
Especially during this time, pretty much from October to the end of January, we're kind of just like, because of your work and because of, December holidays are crazy, and we're going to Vegas.
Yes.
Yes.
Random trip we planned.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been so much fun doing this with you, and 50 episodes in, and we have not lost a bit of momentum for this. And like I said, we don't really have a recording schedule, but we always manage to get it done. I think you and I are just those type of people.
Yeah.
We seem to perform better when the flame is under our ass, and we're like, okay, we have to do it. And we're like, all right. And then we've given some great episodes and from those types of recordings where we're like, we got to do it right now, or we're not going to be able to get it done. And we're like, okay. And then we do the episode and we talk for an hour and a half, and it's just like,
and that's what I was going to say was, I think a lot of times you get worried. You'll message me from work and be like, what are we going to talk about? Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, it's okay.
I know.
And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, that went like an hour and 10 minutes. Yeah. And you were like, I didn't think we would talk for 20. And I'm like, we always have stuff to talk about.
It's funny because I once again did it again. We just recorded, you've already heard it, but we just finished recording the Parks and Rec episode, and we talked for about an hour. And I was sitting there all day today just being like, God, this episode summary is only a page and a half. How are we going to fill in 45 minutes? And we filled in an hour. So it's just kind of like, you and I, when we get on a rant, we really get on a rant, and I like that we don't stop each other. We just let each other go.
We just talk.
I love doing this podcast with you.
I love it.
And we have a lot of episode for real this time. I'm not just saying that. I actually know that we have a lot to talk about there. I said it. So for right now, we are I didn't even tell y'all what show we're doing today. Goodness gracious. What am I thinking? I know you saw the title, but still, it's not the same. So this is one of Anna's favorite shows, and you said on the Parks and Rec episode that this is one of the shows that you always wish you had completed and that you had finished. And looking at how many episodes there are, seems pretty doable that we can rewatch this whole series and it won't be that big of a deal.
Since we watched the pilot, I've watched a couple.
Oh, you have?
Just
okay.
random ones episodes that I knew that I would like, but I think we could watch.
So we are talking about The Americans, and if you didn't know about that show, I don't really consider that to be like one of the biggest shows of all time. I think it is it's definitely one of those series that it has its fan base, and obviously
it got a lot of critical acclaim though.
And it won a lot of Emmy, won a lot of Golden Globes, won a lot of awards. And it was a show that I always knew about, and I love Keri Russell all the way back to Mickey Mouse Club when she was on it with Brittany and Justin and Christina and all them, and Ryan Gosling, and loved all of them. She always had that big head of hair that I loved. So we're going to get into this series and episode information, and then we have plenty to talk about, not just with the Americans, but we're also going to kind of look back on the last 50 episodes and talk about that as well.
All right.
Anna, take it away.
All right. The Americans, the pilot. The Americans was a period spy drama that aired on FX from January 30th, 2013 to May 30th, 2018 for 6 seasons with a total of 75 episodes.
Yeah, we could watch that.
It was created by Joe Weisberg, a former CIA officer who was fascinated with the stories told by agents who worked overseas. After he published his own novel, An Ordinary Spy, he had written a pilot for a spy show about a family of spies rather than just one person. The pilot was also written by Weisberg and directed by Gavin O'Connor. The series takes place in the early 80s, shortly after Ronald Reagan was elected president. Elizabeth Jennings, played by Keri Russell. Gigi. Played by Keri Russell, her husband Philip, played by Matthew Rhys, and their children Paige and Henry, played by Holly Taylor and Kedrick Salati. They live in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. They seem like an average American family, but in reality, Elizabeth and Philip are 2 Soviet KGB officers posing as an American couple.
What a premise.
Wow, yes. The rest of the cast includes FBI counterintelligence agent and the Jennings' new neighbor, Stan Beeman, played by Noah Emmerich.
He's such a great actor.
Yeah, he just randomly appears in like...
He's one of those guys.
Yeah, he is just one of those like
Jamie Sheridan. Yeah,
character actors. Stan's FBI partner, Chris Amador, played by Maximiliano Hernandez. The pilot also introduces recurring characters such as Stan's supervisor, Frank Gadd, played by Richard Thomas.
Another random...
The Waltons.
It.
Stan's wife, Susan, played by Susan Meisner, who had been in the movie Chicago. She was one of the Cell Block Tango.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like one of the criminals, the dancers in that song.
Cell Block Tango.
Cell Block Tango. I don't know what I called it.
I don't know either.
But that was that one. And his son, Matthew, played by Daniel Flaherty.
And he was in the failed Skins U.S. version. The abysmal U.S. adaptation of Skins. That is notorious for being like one of the worst adaptations ever.
And then Agent Gadd's secretary, Martha Hanson, played by Allison Wright. The Americans received critical acclaim and was quickly beloved by viewers. This series is often cited for being one of the best shows of its era, often noting the writing, character development, and acting. The Americans would go on to be nominated for several awards and won 4 Primetime Emmys, including Outstanding Lead Actor in a Drama Series for Matthew Rhys. And although she was nominated 3 times, Keri Russell never secured an Emmy.
I can't believe that.
I don't know who she lost to, but she was amazing in this.
Yeah.
Russell and Rhys met on the set of The Americans, and I don't think they're married. Are you? I think you wrote that in here.
Oh, okay. They're not married?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they are... Like, they consider themselves married,
Gotcha.
But I don't think they've legally ever married.
I probably just saw like partner in their
bio
title and just assumed that they were married.
And then they have a kid together,
okay.
And then she has children from her first marriage.
Right.
But I think they have a child together.
Okay, my bad.
And you can currently watch the full series on Hulu.
I mean, jumping back to Keri Russell never securing an Emmy. I mean, I can't believe that. Yeah. I mean, like, I think maybe biased because I love Keri Russell, but like, yeah, it's just, has she ever secured? Because I know she got nominated for Felicity once, maybe that was a Golden Globe. Golden Globes feels like more of a Felicity thing.
Yes,
but yeah, I feel like she never won. That sucks. But anyway, so you watched this when it originally aired? Initially, or did you catch it on streaming?
Yeah. And she won for Felicity.
Oh, okay, that's what I was saying.
She did. She won the Golden Globe.
See, I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to because I remember looking all that up when I was doing all this research. Yeah, I don't know who won. Maybe it was Olivia Colman for The Crown.
Maybe. It just might have been.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of someone who, like, I'm trying to think of what was going on at that time, because I remember watching that Emmy with you because you wanted to see if they were both going to win.
Let me see. So I watch Elizabeth Moss won it for Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, cool.
I
okay.
know, like, yeah.
Our other favorite.
Yeah. Our other West Wing. Our
right.
other November show, West Wing. Elizabeth Moss. Yes, I did, and I probably watched it because of Keri Russell strictly. I loved her in Felicity, of course. I mean, that is what she first. I mean, I did not watch Mickey Mouse Club, so I did not know her history with that really at the time.
She was also in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids sequel.
Didn't know that.
And she was in a movie called 8 Days a Week, which is a really good movie. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, so I did watch it.
In The Curve.
And this was. I don't think my mom watched it, but I talked to her about it.
Oh, okay.
Because it takes place in the 80s.
Yeah.
That was when I was around 10, 11 years old. And I remember talking to my mom because I do remember when Reagan was elected.
Yeah.
It was obviously, I mean, kind of, there's no definition of who a politician is these days. And I remember just everyone was kind of like, Ronald Reagan, he's like an actor and he's president. He had been married to the actress Jane Wyman, who was later on Falcon Crest, and he had obviously got married to Nancy Reagan.
She straightened him out.
Yeah, and so I just remember that time, and so I would talk to my mom about, was there like a real fear of Russia? Like, did you feel that? And she would tell me yes.
Yeah.
Like, she felt like we would be attacked, or that there was that real sense of that bad things were going to happen.
Well, there was a while where they were scared of the Russians, weren't they? Because
yeah,
I mean, I hate to just always bring it back to Greece too, but like when they were in the fallout shelter, weren't they afraid of the Russians at that point in time, or was that a different era?
That might have been the Cubans, the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right, I'm always distracted because of Let's Do It for Our Country starts
playing. He was talking about nuclear war, but I think that was around the time of JFK and the Cuban Missile Crisis.
That's what it was.
And all of that. But same sort of concept.
Yeah.
I mean, you just didn't know, like. And I don't remember my parents being afraid.
Yeah.
And that's why I talked to my mom about it. I remember the gas shortages in the 70s, having to wait in line based on your license plate. You would be told these are the days you can go and get gas, and the Cold War, and, Russia is bad, and the Soviets, and then of course, the Olympics, we didn't go to Moscow. They didn't come here. I mean, it was a lot, but as a kid, you didn't really know what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I was really intrigued by this, because I could go back in time and watch this as an adult going, oh, this was the stuff that was happening.
Right.
I mean, whether it was really like this. And,
yeah.
But who knows? I mean, there might have been some.
Right. You watch shows like The Americans and Hunters, and you're just like, I mean, I know this is all based on historical events, but how real is what we're watching right now? Like, right. But
could this have happened?
The Americans and also Hunters, both of those shows, very well is a reality. So it's not too far from fiction.
Yeah.
I just kind of going back on what you said about like your mom kind of feeling like the overall threat of the Russians. I mean, we felt the same way. I mean, we felt the same way when 9/11 happened. I mean, like it was and since it was on our homeland.
Spoiler.
Yeah, we haven't recorded the episode yet, but you'll have heard it. So future us is saying that it was a good episode. But yeah, I just remember like just the overall threat of it could happen at any time, because it did. And
that, and the whole like pressing the button. And then there were movies
pressing the button. Yeah, that took me a second. Yeah, to realize what you were saying.
There were movies like, the day after, not the day after tomorrow, because that's the day after. I was like, that's the weather movie. The day after was about the nuclear war, and those were movies of the week, and you were like, oh my gosh.
Was the British one Threads? Yeah, Threads was the British one.
You were thinking these things could happen.
Yeah.
And so you, particularly as a kid, you didn't know how real it was, and so you didn't have that angst, but I can imagine as a parent and, being a grown-up, like, what do you do?
Right.
And so, yeah.
All right, so let's talk about our 50th episode a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, you kind of talked about the Reagan years, so we don't have to go more about that. We can get to the fun stuff, the more lighthearted stuff.
Okay.
It's our 50th episode, and I think with any milestone episode, whether it's what's funny is I kept missing our other milestone ones. We were just so crazy with our recording. I would be done recording and I'd be in the middle of editing. I'm like, oh, that was our 20th episode. I would just be like, like doing the math. I'd be like, oh, that's our 20th episode. So I started mapping out our numbers, so I'll know by now. So doing this one, we can kind of go back and look back. So amongst the shows you'd never seen, which one has been your favorite so far?
Of the shows I had never seen, I will say I have 3. I will say Hacks, Heartbreak High,
yes,
and Severance.
Okay,
which is kind of crazy because I think they're all really different,
extremely different shows.
Yeah, and I love them. I thought they all had good premises. While they all kind of maybe mimicked like other shows we have seen or watched or maybe even talked about, well, not really. I mean, Heartbreak High was probably close to something like a 90210 or something, but it was just very different in the way that it talked about sex and the currentness of students today and their struggles.
I think they also did a really good job. They created some really likable, lovable characters that we fell in love with and that we were rooting for in the final episode and that we got really attached to, and especially when we found out the whole thing that happened from the first episode to the end.
And we watched all of that first season.
Yeah.
Hacks, I loved. I mean, I just found it very hilarious that we started with Designing Women that month, which I still love, and then we ended with Hacks.
Yeah.
Kind of accidentally. We had mixed things up, and then I landed on Hacks, and we were like, whoa. Like
Jean Smart, yeah.
Yeah.
And we both love Jean Smart, so it works out.
Severance, which is hilarious because, Adam Scott is in just one of the previous shows that we have talked about this month, but just totally different, just wild, and
it felt.
I loved it, and we've watched several of those episodes. We haven't totally finished it, but we should, and we will.
Yeah,
but I definitely loved that one. So, what about you? What are some of the shows that you'd never seen that had been your favorites?
So, Severance and Heartbreak High were 2 of mine too. Heartbreak High, I was very surprised that. And I loved it, and I just loved how open and honest and kind of very direct it was about having conversations about sex and about consent and about all these different identities that people have, and it's okay. And I loved kind of the world that they lived in, where everyone was just, not everyone, but most everyone was just very like accepting of it, and it just kind of was like there was the character of, I think it was Spider, that like was seemingly straight. I'm pretty sure he's straight on the show. His character's straight, but like kind of just loving the culture and going to all the Pride stuff, and like kind of the person that like I would be, like just kind of celebrating rather than just like being the straight guy that feels uncomfortable. It just felt really cool that everyone was just kind of on board with each other, that it was just like, this is how it is and we accept it. I know that there were other aspects, different characters on the show that weren't tolerant of it, and that's life. But I mean, I liked that the kids themselves were like, no, this is our world. This is how we are.
And I like that because I feel like in a lot of shows, and then even in both of our own experiences in high school, it was not very open and talked about at all.
No.
I mean, not at all. And I always joke about saying things like, I'm glad we didn't have phones. I'm glad we didn't have social media. but I do wonder what it would have been like. Would it have been worse? Would it have been better? Would it have been something we talked about? Because in one of the episodes we're going to do next is, we talk about something that's really taboo even still today, and that's mental health. And I feel like we didn't talk about those things because they were kept quiet. And now, because of the ability to have access to so much information 24/7, shows like Heartbreak High show that you can talk about them.
Right.
And it's not always pleasant. I mean, but you can talk about it, and it can be good, it can be bad. There can be resolution, there can be discussion and open dialogue, but I feel like in our high school lives, we missed a lot. Yeah. And I mean, I loved my high school experience. Same. There were probably some good, some bad. Yeah. Again, I still probably wouldn't go back, but I look at Heartbreak High and I'm like, oh, I wish high school would have been sort of like that.
Right. Yeah. Same. Yeah. I also love Severance. I think that was a show that it felt like, and still while we're watching it, and there's still so much, I mean, they announced the season 2 starts in January, so we gotta finish it off. I think we're like halfway through or something like that. I just love the idea of the show. I love the idea of the show.
So
and it really just felt like something out of like an anthology series that you would only get to see like one episode of, but instead you get like a full series of it. It reminds me a lot of so if anyone knows what creepypasta is, it's basically just like internet urban legends. And there's this one called The Backrooms, and it's basically like you're in like this empty office space, but it's like a different dimension. And everything is just like void of color. Everything's just a little off. And that's what Severance really reminded me of, just kind of those Backrooms videos where it's just kind of like you're separated from the rest of the world. Your mind is separated from the rest of the world, and you're in this very like weird office space that's just really odd, and visually it's such a cool show to look at. It's a very weird show, and I think that's the other reason why I like it so much. But I mean, like the one that I have to say I've loved the most, still Melrose Place technically isn't an answer because that wasn't a show that we watched for the pod. We watched it inspired by the pod. But I have to go with Lost. That was like I mean, like I'm sitting here like, how in the world did I never watch this show? Like, how in the world?
You love it now.
I love it now. Like I'm on the Lost subreddit now. Like I'm listening to all their theories, and you got the Getting Lost documentary coming out that was about the whole making of the series. I can't wait to watch that, even though I've only watched like half of season 1. And I really, really want to keep watching it. And one day we're just going to have to sit down and watch it. I want to watch the rest of Wednesday because I mean, especially after seeing Beetlejuice. I said his name 3 times. He's right behind you. And I mean, love Jenna Ortega and love Catherine Zeta-Jones and, Ricky Lindholm and Christina Ricci, that whole cast of awesome women. And I kind of want to keep watching that, so we need to jump on these shows.
All right.
So what was a show?
Okay, I can go back to my favorite episodes to record.
Okay, so what were some of your favorite episodes to record?
Okay, I will say Melrose.
Oh yeah.
One, because we had talked about it so much.
Yes.
But also because it really brought me back to a time of when I was like finishing college, still not sure what I wanted to do with my life. I had dreams, and that show like really mimicked those things. Yeah. I mean, I didn't live in an apartment complex with a swimming pool in the middle of it in Los Angeles, of course.
But you knew people that had that.
Yeah, I did. But I was that age. I had just finished college. I was just starting my first teaching job. I was living in a townhouse, like on a street with a bunch of friends.
And you had roommates,
with my roommate, and it was just something very relatable.
Yeah.
And so going back and talking about that show just brought me back to that time. So I thought it was fun. But I did also think it was fun that you fell in love with it too.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Still in love with it, yeah.
You love it. And then the other one was The Bear, because that is a current show that we both just fell in love with. And I can watch it. I can watch forks or fishes just about any time. But also just because I learned a lot about you and like your whole like restaurant career and life.
That really has become the episode that my family has loved because they were just like, my sister was just like, I just learned so much about you.
Well, and I don't know if everyone realized how many rants you had actually worked at.
How experienced I am in the restaurant industry. So when I say I know something, I know something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were your favorite episodes?
Well, obviously Melrose Place was one of them. Melrose Place, not only because I talked about the show so much leading up to it, but I just remember like we were in the middle of recording that episode, and I just remember thinking like, we're just a couple of podcasters. Like we're just a couple of podcasters, and we know what we're doing, and we're having so much fun, and you can hear it in the episode how much fun we're having. And how like excited we were to do this episode, and I'm given the plot summary, and we're given our, you know, like a lot of times when we do our plot summary, you know, I'm reading it, and we don't really talk a lot sometimes because we've spent so much time talking in between. So a lot of times I'll just do the plot summary and be like, okay, this is the plot summary. I don't want to give away too much. Y'all go watch it or don't, you know, if it sounds interesting. I don't want to give away too much, but I want to tell you enough to where you're interested in watching it. But with Melrose Place, I just kept stopping, and we just kept talking. It was just like,
that one
I was like,
long.
first of all, let me talk about this other thing, you know. And it was like I just kept Sandy's accent, like I just kept like stopping for everything, you know, how much of a dick Michael is.
But what was funny was when we watched this episode, it was before they started their podcast, like literally, and the things we said about it were things Courtney Thorne-Smith, Daphne Zuniga, and Laura Layton were all saying, and I felt very justified.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like, all right. Even the people on the show felt this way. And like, so I didn't feel bad, but I also felt like validated.
Yeah.
So it was pretty funny that our episode came out like right around the time they started their episode and their podcast.
And the other thing about Melrose Place that I will always look back fondly of is it's currently our most popular episode. So it really got I posted it on the subreddit page, and it got a lot of views that way, and people were commenting on the Reddit post and just being like, oh my god, this is such a great idea for a podcast, and we're like, oh, followed, y'all are so funny. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, just like people are saying stuff. And, you know, like it just, like you said, it felt that episode, I look back on it, and the whole episode just felt very validating on all fronts. Like I felt like we have found our stride, and like we knew what we were doing, and this is our podcast now. And also like the feedback that we got from it, and just the experience itself. We talked a lot about Melrose Place leading up to that episode, and I mean, like the only other thing we have left to do that we've talked up so much is we have to do an episode about Grease 2 one day.
Yeah. Was there a TV show about Grease 2?
No, but we can have a special episode.
We can do a movies month or something. I don't know.
Who knows? Another one that I had a lot of fun recording. I liked the outcome of it, but I had a lot more fun recording it, was Mad Men. Because we got a little tipsy.
Oh yeah,
and you can hear it when I'm like reading the plot summary. I'm like, ooh, I'm struggling. I'm like, and I really want to stop recording and go lay down. We got buzzed, because we had to re-record that.
Yeah, we had to
re-record that one. So, and the first time I held back. I decided not to really drink that much, but this second time,
because you had been sick the first time, and then this time. Had we recorded something before the second recording of Mad Men? Because we had been drinking a little while. Yeah. It wasn't like we just started recording and just started drinking.
Yeah.
We're not that lightweight people.
Right. I mean, like, it was, we recorded. Did we record something else and then Mad Men?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so we had been kind of drinking, and I don't think we talked about drinking on the first episode. We were just doing it, and then by the time we recorded Mad Men, we were on like maybe our third drink or something. Because when we're sitting at home, we don't have anywhere to go. It's nighttime.
Yeah,
why not? And I mean, like, I look back on that one, and finally I get to talk about my fascination with that old game show, My Wife or My Secretary. This kind of viral game show clip that I would see all the time, and I'm like, what is this? And I look it up. oh, this is real. This is a real thing. And I was like fascinated by it. And then also Lost. That was a fun one to record. I know I said it's one that I liked, that I never saw, but that was a fun one, just because, I don't know, maybe it was just I was excited to do Lost. It was a new show I was really excited about to watch.
Oh, and that one brought me back because I had watched that one.
And and I mean, like, I think a lot of the shows from October were my favorite to record, not just because it was a me month.
It was
but
Jeff month.
Just the shows I was just really excited about. We had all these different ideas and questions, and we really got creative that month, I felt. And October, not just because it's my month, but that's been my favorite month that we recorded so far of our cluster of episodes.
Oh.
So what were some shows that you had already seen that you liked less when you rewatched it?
I had two.
Yeah.
And I will say Dynasty and Three's Company. And probably both for the same reason that I don't think that they just didn't age well. They didn't age well.
Yeah.
They were very misogynistic, homophobic. But what's sad is those were the times.
Yeah.
And not that it makes it right, of course. I'm just saying, like, that is how the world was. Still somewhat today. It's like that. But it was very in your face. And for Three's Company, what was sad was it was meant to be part of the joke.
Right.
And that really made me sad. Dynasty made me sad because I just was like, oh my gosh, the struggles are real and they have been real for a long time. But they weren't afraid to obviously say it.
I mean,
so it didn't age well.
Right. But a part of me also wonders, kind of looking back on it, and I've said the same things about Dynasty and Three's Company as you just did, but like kind of looking back on it and thinking about other, like, I think I want to believe that they had these types of shows like Three's Company and Dynasty, or All in the Family, or those other shows that were considered to be controversial and maybe outdated. I always kind of wondered if that was their way of, like, let's have a conversation about it. Like,
well, All in the Family for sure was. I will say that. Yeah. Yes. I mean, Norman Lear was famous for that.
Yeah.
I don't know if necessarily Three's Company was.
I mean, like, you know, like, that's what I want. That's what I hope was the point.
Maybe.
Like,
I mean, obviously.
Because, you know, like, because when we watched Dynasty, obviously, in Three's Company, I felt the same way you did. But like I said, I just kind of think about the times back then, and people weren't talking about any of those things at all. Like, they weren't talking about racism. They weren't talking about homophobia. They weren't talking about misogyny. They weren't talking about any of that. And it was these kind of new shows from the late 70s and early 80s that were kind of like, no, let's have this conversation. Maybe they didn't go about it in the best way, but I mean, maybe it got the conversation going.
And I will say, you're exactly right, because I watched, obviously, for sure, Three's Company as a small kid. And I never thought anything was wrong with Jack living with Janet and Chrissy.
Right.
And it wasn't just because he was straight. I mean, or they thought he was, you know, they had to pretend he was gay. I actually thought, like, why can't he live with them?
Yeah.
Like, that was, I was like, wwhy does he have to pretend
and
he's
it
gay?
wasn't like,
so that, as a kid, I think I even knew that.
Yeah.
So, like, I felt like I just
and the
I struggled.
Yeah, and the three characters didn't think that it was wrong or taboo for them to be living together. They just had to do what they had to do in order for Jack to live there
because of the
old fashioned landlord who. We already talked about all that, but so that's what I hope the point of it was. Obviously, Three's Company is based on a British show that had the same plot, so I know the culture in the UK is a little different than here. But yeah, I just hope that it was meant to start a conversation. I think a lot of times it did.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, what about you? What are some shows that you had already seen that you liked less after the rewatching the pilot?
I have to say, I was monumentally disappointed in Arrested Development. I was monumentally disappointed because it was just, I mean, we touched on it when we watched Veep. when we had the Veep episode. But just like kind of that brand of cringe comedy, I'm just not into it anymore. And it was, for me, it was a very brief era where I was. Even going back and watching like some of the older like Judd Apatow movies, I'm just like, ugh, like I can watch Superbad and that's about it. Like, and that wasn't really a Judd Apatow movie. So, I mean, like he just produced it. But I mean, like going back and watching 40-Year-Old Virgin, absolutely not. Like I could not sit through that. I could not sit through Anchorman. I could not sit through those like uncomfortable comedies just because it's not my thing.
That's so funny because I've never seen either one of those.
Yeah, I mean, like they're funny movies for what they were, but I mean, it's just kind of like you're either into it or you're not. And I think I just had my era of it. And then there are some of the shows that stuck, like The Office and Parks and Rec, and Superbad, where I can kind of watch these cringe comedy type shows and it's okay. Maybe even Veep too. But with Arrested Development, I'm like, this is too cringe.
I can tell you, I can't. You know, I didn't like it.
There are some episodes I could probably go back and laugh at, but like, I just, as much as I love that cast, I was just like, I don't think I can go back and rewatch this. Like, I think I'm done. I think this is where I end it with this show.
Yeah,
which is fine because I hadn't watched it in years. So I mean, but it was just, you know, maybe it was just an era where I didn't have cable. I just didn't have a lot to watch. So I just kind of watched it.
And that's, I think, it with like Dynasty and Three's Company for me. That was what was on.
Right.
So there were no choices. So
yeah,
again.
And it was something different because at the time leading up to like kind of the cringe comedy takeover, the brand of comedy was very much like Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler, that kind of silly, absurdist, high stakes, like you have to raise this much money or we're going to lose our house, or you have to complete all of these grades or you're going to lose your dad's company. Like they're always like high stakes. And I think like I just got used to that type of show or movie. And so then when kind of things changed, I wasn't really into it. And looking back on it now, I'm just like, I was into it for a little bit once I got used to it, but I can't go back. Okay. My humor just isn't there anymore.
Gotcha.
But yeah, other than that, any other show that we've rewatched, I have found some nostalgia or some kind of getting a kick out of it. Like watching, I was gonna put Degrassi, but watching that Degrassi episode was kind of funny. You know, it was just kind of like, because it was the wrong episode. I didn't know that was the pilot episode.
Right.
It was this really heavy subject, but we ended up having like such a great time recording it and talking about the other. I'm like, yeah. And then the episode that follows that, they're like running for class president. You know, it's just like after they have this really heavy two-parter. But yeah, like I think every other show we've watched that I hadn't seen in a while, even like Boy Meets World or Family Matters, where I was just like, I can't dislike this. This is so freaking charming. Like this is so sweet. Like I can't not like this. But yeah, Arrested Development's really the only one I would say.
Okay.
If you want to count A Discovery of Witches, I guess.
Because we watched it and then we tried to watch it again, and
it was just, we liked it so little that we forgot we watched it.
And then again, shout out to Summer and Alicia, who have both watched it, and they both are like, you got to keep going.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was Alicia when we went to Biloxi. I think it was Alicia or Summer who were like, yeah, you have to get through the first. I was like, I'm done doing that. Like, I'm done doing the whole.
I think they said episode 4, and we're like, okay.
Yeah,
but
they're like, oh, it really picks up towards the end of season 1. I'm like, I'm done doing that. Like, if I'm not into a show after the first or second episode, I'm like, I'm not watching this. Like, and I've stopped doing that. So, yeah. All right, ready to get into this pilot summary?
Let's do this.
All right. The Americans pilot summary. In a cocktail bar, Elizabeth Jennings, disguised as a sex worker, talks to an FBI bureaucrat. She takes him to a hotel room where she seduces him for information.
Oh, yeah.
Subsequently, Nikolai Timoshev, played by David Vadam, a KGB operative who has defected to the United States, is being watched by Philip Jennings, played by Matthew Rhys, Elizabeth's husband, and Rob, Chase Coleman, played by Chase Coleman. They stand in an alleyway waiting for Timoshev. As Timoshev approaches them, he realizes it is a setup and he runs, with Philip and Rob in pursuit. Philip captures him, but not before Rob is stabbed by Timoshev. Elizabeth picks the three of them up in a car, and they drop Rob off at a nearby hospital, but miss the ship that will return Timoshev to Russia. At the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., Stan Bean I'm sorry, y'all. At the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., Stan Beeman meets his new counterintelligence partner, Chris Amador. Their supervisor, Agent Mark Bartholomew, informs him that Timoshev failed to arrive. Meanwhile, Philip hides Timoshev in the trunk of his car in his garage, tied up and gagged. Yeah, that whole thing was insane.
Crazy.
Philip threatens to kill him if he makes any noise. Philip then leaves the garage and goes into his home where Elizabeth and their two children, Paige and Henry, get ready for school. In a flashback, a young Elizabeth is practicing fighting moves with her trainer. Timoshev takes over for her trainer. He and Elizabeth practice. Timoshev gets aggressive and eventually sexually assaults her. That was a really tough scene to watch.
Yeah.
So they have this guy that sexually assaulted Elizabeth, but Philip is unaware of that part.
Yes, he doesn't know.
He just knows that they captured this guy, and he just knows that they're capturing him. They're trying to get information out of him.
Yes.
Back in the present day, Philip, in disguise, meets with Martha Hansen, a woman who works for Agent Bartholomew's office. Philip probes her for information on Timoshev, to which she reveals that the FBI have the car description and license plate number used for the kidnapping, and that it was carried out by two men and a woman. Later, Philip tells Elizabeth everything the FBI has on them. The Jennings family go next door to meet their new neighbors, who happens to be Stan and his family, which, of course, I mean, You're like, Stan tells him that he works in counterintelligence. Later, debating whether or not Stan moving next door is a coincidence, Elizabeth tells Philip that they have to get rid of Timoshev as soon as they can. Philip disagrees, and during their argument, he suggests they defect to America by giving Timoshev to the FBI. Elizabeth immediately rejects this idea. In another flashback, Philip and Elizabeth are introduced for the first time and are given their orders. In the present day, Philip, while jogging, calls the hospital where Rob was dropped off. He is informed later that he died. Later, Stan asks Philip to lend him jumper cables. Philip takes him to the garage, and Stan notices the Jennings car in the same type used in the kidnapping, albeit with Virginia license plate. Later, Philip removes Timoshev from the trunk of the car in order to take him to Stan. Elizabeth attacks Timoshev, attempting to kill him despite his apology for hurting her. Philip asks how he hurt her, and when neither of them replies, he breaks Timoshev's neck, which was so badass.
Oh, yeah.
Philip and Elizabeth pour acid on the body and dump it in a wastewater pool at an abandoned factory. They then have sex in their car, so, I mean, it got them going. The next day, Elizabeth goes to see General Viktor Zhukov, who questions her about the failed mission. When Zhukov asks for an update on Philip's loyalty based on Elizabeth's earlier reports, she dismisses them, covering for Philip and taking responsibility for the mission's failure. In a final flashback, Philip and Elizabeth have just moved to the States. Philip tries to get close to her, but she rejects him. In the final scene, Stan breaks into the Jennings garage and checks their trunk. Finding nothing, he leaves, and Philip hides nearby with a silenced firearm in his hands. Yeah, so I originally started typing out this plot summary, and I was like, this is going to be like 8 pages long. I was just like, this is going to be so long, because I left out a lot, and I'm okay with that, because I gave y'all the most basic plot summary I possibly could, because I mean, like, this is an hour long, a lot happens, and but I feel like that was good enough. That was descriptive enough.
Yeah, I mean, you're introduced to them, the families, how they're all connected. You get a little bit of intrigue on, the whole Timoshev and Martha.
Yeah, because I left out the whole thing with when
the store.
Philip and the daughter and Paige are at the mall, and they see the guy that like harasses her and stuff. He goes to that guy's house later.
But that's not really.
That was such a badass scene.
It was, but it's not like.
I think that was technically that was like the second to last scene. But so I'm hooked. I want to know. I want to keep watching this show. I mean, not that I needed more of a reason. I love Keri Russell. I love the idea. I love the premise of the show. When you first. Because you're the one that told me about The Americans. I'd obviously heard of it, but I'd never watched it. And when you kind of told me what it was about, I was just like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I was like, I actually really want to watch that. So yeah, if you have Hulu, go check it out.
Check it out.
I think that about wraps this up. What do you think?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that about
Happy 50th.
I was just about to say that. Happy 50th episode.
Happy 50th episode.
So much fun with my boo. Well, that about wraps up this episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at We Judge Pilot Pod. We're also on Facebook. Leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or leave some emojis in the comments. You have even less than you did on the last one.
I know, there weren't that many. So I have the U.S. flag, the Russian flag.
Okay.
Any of the emojis that change their color hair, because they both change like
they're
their
different disguises,
wigs, glasses, all kinds of stuff. Cocktails, a hotel, the hospital, a knife, the rope, a car, a jogger, and the gun.
What do you have for us? A knife.
A knife. All right. Well, we are going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon. And if you've listened to all 50 episodes, we really appreciate you. Thanks for listening. Bye.